Go ahead and start. So my name is Laurel Glenn. I know a lot of you have probably seen before if you've been attending these safety webinars. I'm the program manager for safety, and we also have Aaron with us today as well, who also works with the safety projects. We appreciate you joining the webinar today on automated shuttles and buses for everyone. You have all come to the meeting muted, and we would like you to stay that way until maybe the question and answer session, which will be at the end. Captions are on for your convenience, and the videos are currently also off, and they will remain off during the presentation just to help with bandwidth for our webinar. If you have any questions during the webinar, there is a section at the bottom where you can go ahead in the chat box and go ahead and type a question. Also, if you all of a sudden think of a resource you want to share with everybody, go ahead and just use that chat box as you wish. And if appropriate, I will go ahead and also interject with those questions when we get a chance. So you can go ahead and use that for all the communication that you want until the question and answer session comes about. We're also going to be recording this webinar, which will be available to you probably later in the week. So you probably see that record button up there as well. At this time, I'd like to introduce today's presenter. Dr. Katie Turnbull is a Senior Research Fellow at the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, TTI. She's also an Executive Professor in the Department of Landscape Architecture and Urban Planning at Texas A&M University. Dr. Turnbull maintains a diverse research portfolio with current projects focusing on transformational technologies to enhance mobility and safety to all users. Active in the Transportation Research Board, she served as chair of the TRB Executive Committee in 2018. And I know I've heard a lot from you already who have signed up for this webinar, who are very excited to hear from her, as am I. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Dr. Catherine Turnbull for our presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laurel. It's a pleasure to participate in the webinar today and talk a little bit about a recent safety project on automated shuttles and buses for all users. So let me see if I can. I'd like to acknowledge, obviously, some of the co-workers on this project. Two researchers from TTI that supported the efforts throughout were Laura Higgins and Brittany Glick, and they were a big help in, as you'll hear, a lot of the interviews and surveys that we did as part of the project. The project focuses on ensuring that individuals with disabilities have equal access to automated buses and shuttles to enhance their mobility. And I think, as probably everyone on the webinar today knows, there are a lot of projects, pilots, demonstration projects that have been conducted, are underway. And a lot of those have come about through a variety of different methods, mechanisms, funding sources, using different types of vehicles. So I think we're still in the experimental stages, if you will, or the piloting and demonstration projects. So hearing from other participants as we go through this webinar today, and then getting your thoughts, comments at the end, as well as the question and answer, I think will help move the discussion along and help moving and ensuring that individuals with all types of potential disabilities have access to automated buses and shuttles. So the project I'm going to highlight today is really a fairly modest effort, but I think, again, it enhances and helps move that dialogue along. So the project focused on introducing individuals with mobility and visual impairments to an automated vehicle. And as you'll hear in a minute, it was the Rapid Shuttle in Arlington, Texas, in between Dallas and Fort Worth. And then we also introduced them to a smart intersection and got information from them on their complete trip. Because as we all know, access to and from buses and shuttles are as important as the vehicle themselves as it comes to enhancing mobility. So we built on existing demonstrations. Again, we were able to partner with the city of Arlington, who was the key sponsor for the Rapid project, for rides in the shuttle. And then we conducted online interviews with A&M students on the smart intersection here on campus that I'll highlight in a minute, as well as getting their feedback on automated shuttles. And then we held a workshop on possible routes for automated shuttles on the campus here, as well as the Texas A&M San Antonio campus, which is a relatively new campus, and there's a new development going in adjacent to it, along with the hospital complex. So it's sort of one of those logical areas to take a look at shuttle service, but especially some automated shuttles as that project, the development is moving forward, as well as the expansion of the university campus is occurring. So a little bit of background on Arlington. Again, many of you probably know it's one of the communities that's been sort of instrumental in trying to be a leader in automated shuttles. Back in 2017 and 2018, it had the first Milo that was two little shuttles that operated on a parkway in the entertainment district. They then had a 1-year project with Drive AI, where the vehicle actually operated in mixed traffic. And then most recently, they received an FTA grant for the SMART project. And that's the one that we were able to use to interview people as part of this project. And we'll see if I can make the slide go forward. Yep, there we go. So again, the Rapid Shuttle was and is a coordinated effort of the City of Arlington, University of Texas at Arlington, which is sort of in the downtown area, via Rideshare, May Mobility, and other groups. And they had 4 Lexus sedans, and then 1 Polaris GEM vehicle, which is the wheelchair lift equipped vehicle that you'll see, and which is obviously one of the key focuses of this project, although the individuals with visual impairments were able to use the sedan. So we sort of had 2 vehicles that we got feedback on, and obviously, as is the case with all the other current pilot projects and demonstration projects, there's a fleet attendant behind the wheel at all time with the project. This just gives you an idea of the central Arlington area, the University of Arlington you see there, and it was that area where the demonstration occurred. It was a demand responsive, so unlike other projects where it's a shuttle making a regular route, in this case, participants registered, got their trip, and then made the trip both on to the destination and then returned. It was a standard fare for individuals, but it was free for students from the University of Arlington, University of Texas at Arlington. And then the other project that we were able to build on was a TxDOT research project that was conducted by TTI that developed a smart intersection to look at reducing interactions, negative interactions, if you will, between buses, bicyclists, and pedestrians at signalized intersections. And so the project, let's see if I can get this video to work. Well, looks like it's sort of working, but not. The bus makes a left-hand turn through the intersection and alerts the individuals that the bus made the turn and it's safe to cross. That was then taken out into the field on the university campus and again put into an intersection and monitored for a year. In this case, in both cases, the bus is communicating with the intersection through DSRC radio. The bus and intersection know that the bus is turning. And so in addition to the annunciator there, what doesn't show up is the, let me go back one, just see if it works. There's a supplemental bus sign above the pedestrian signal. So again, just a different way of trying to reduce collisions and other types of occurrences among pedestrians, bicyclists at the intersection. We did do surveys of users during the demonstration, but we did not have any individuals crossing that were using wheelchairs or other mobility devices or that had visual impairments. So as part of this project, we although the project was over, we used that in an online video to get feedback reaction from individuals in wheelchairs. So the sessions that we held with the rapid vehicle, we obviously went through the appropriate institutional review board, IRB, for research involving human subjects and had all the surveys and the approach approved. We worked with the city and with the transit operators to recruit participants. We did pre-surveys and pre-discussions with the individuals. They rode in the vehicle, and then we did a post-survey and a post-discussion. For the online interviews, we worked with the different groups on campus that have outreach activities to individuals with special needs and recruited them. And then it was an online interview with videos of the smart intersection as well as photos of automated shuttles, and then questions on both to get their feedback and reaction. And in both cases, some of those questions dealt with their complete trip information. How did they get to and from a bus stop, or how did they get around their neighborhood, or what were some of the impediments to travel in areas that they either wish to visit, their origins or their destinations. So as you might expect, the feedback, and I think this is consistent with information that's being gathered from other pilots around the country as well as international. Europe's had a number of different automated shuttle projects underway. Very positive reactions to riding in the shuttle. The participants felt comfortable. They said they felt safe. They felt it was a generally smooth ride when it was in the automated mode. They did, all of them, note that they did need some assistance, either getting in and out of the vehicle or other types of assistance. A couple things they did mention was, especially individuals with limited sight or no sight, as you could see from the previous slide. We had one of the participants was totally blind and had a seeing eye dog, was ensuring their verification of their pickup and drop off location. So making sure that they were aware of where they were getting out of the vehicle, and although again in this case they never got out and got back in at a stop, making sure that when they made their arrangements for the return trip, they knew, for example, which door the vehicle would be at. So that was a very important point that was made by individuals with limited or no sight. All of them indicated that they would use it on a regular basis. There was some discussion among some participants that, you have a Lexus on the one hand, and then you have a GEM vehicle that doesn't seem to be quite the same caliber of vehicle as the Lexus. And so making sure that individuals with disabilities felt they were receiving the same treatment was noted as important. And then again, a number made the comment that they still had a need for assistance. The reactions to the smart intersection by participants was also very positive. They felt it would make them feel more comfortable crossing the intersection. A number of them made the comment about wheelchairs are harder for drivers to see. Obviously, bus operators have a somewhat higher level of vision, but still it was important. And that not only was it important to alert pedestrians, but it was important to alert bus drivers and operators of pedestrians, especially wheelchair users or blind individuals in the intersection. And I think it's important to note, when we tested the smart intersection, we knew that that was just one method. I mean, there are other ways that you can alert the bus operators. I should mention, we also tested, and it's still in operation on 2 A&M buses, the Mobileye collision warning system. So again, that's a way that alerts the bus operator of a potential collision or an individual getting too close to a bus. So we monitored that, evaluated that. the smart intersection was the other way, alerting what are sometimes distracted pedestrians to the movement of buses and others. The individuals also were positive to the idea of the automated shuttle. Like a number of areas, we were able to test an automated shuttle here on campus about 2 years ago for a 2-month period. And so some of them, although they said they did not ride on that specific shuttle, knew about automated shuttles and were very positive. They did raise some questions about different types of wheelchair ramps or lifts and the on-board securement, indicating that, again, that was something they wanted to be sure was met their needs and was a concern for using those types of vehicles. A number of, as you would expect, ideas on complete streets and making sure that sidewalks, for example, are in good conditions, that there are curb cuts and ramps where they need to be, especially for individuals using wheelchairs or walkers or other types of mobility devices. Handicap parking spots if they were able to drive, which a few of them were. Looking at traffic speeds in areas and making sure that they were conducive to the neighborhood areas and that vehicles weren't moving too fast. Again, ensuring the correct location for getting on and off the vehicles. There were some questions about vehicle sharing by participants, especially, again, those with no sight, not being sure about who they might be getting into the vehicle with, and then again, concerned that they still needed an attendant for most of theirs. So one of the things that we did as part of the workshop on campus was to take a look at, in this case, Aggie Maps has a very good origin destination. It gives you bus information, bike information, parking information, but it's also got accessibility entrances for all the buildings. So, planning for automated vehicles is really no different than planning for any type of bus service. And so looking at the origins and destinations and looking at the conditions. But again, since we were focusing on making sure they were accessible, we did take a look and then took a look at where some of the local and logical stopping areas for the buses and the automated shuttles would be, and where the connections to accessible entrances are and how people would get out, and making sure that those pathways were good. As you would assume in the major insides of the campuses, those pathways are very good. It's when you get out into sort of some of the edges of the campuses and into some of the neighborhoods that you run into more of the problems, focusing on the complete street elements of the project. And that was the same when we were looking at the new developments in around the San Antonio campus, that really provides a little bit easier environment to make sure that you marry or match the development of the community and the streets and the sidewalks with the potential automated shuttle routes and the links to the hospital area. So again, it gives you just one I think element or one snapshot of disability planning for those types of services. Certainly other considerations, as I mentioned, are the vehicle type. The two that were tested in Arlington were the Lexus sedans. Even individuals that used walkers, for example, in that case, did need some support sometimes, some assistance getting in and out of the vehicle, getting their walker folded up. And again, with the GEM vehicle, the individuals in wheelchairs still needed help mostly because of the ramp. Most of them needed assistance being pushed up. If you have some of the other automated shuttles that are coming online now, you have lower level ramps. Some are using wheelchair equipped lifts. So it still is a bit of a mix. And I think with some of the newer vehicles that are coming online now in 2024-25, that I think we will see more purpose-built vehicles, if you will, for automated shuttles, and it'll make that boarding and alighting easier. But certainly looking at that, the securement technology, the wayfinding that's needed to help, especially get individuals with no sight or limited visibility to and from, and then the outreach to those groups, as you see here with the Med City Mover in Rochester, Minnesota, which has just completed its 1 year last August. So the outreach to the communities is obviously a key element. I mean, we even had that problem just recruiting participants in the Arlington area, for example. Making that ongoing effort and making sure that you continue to reach out to the appropriate groups and involve them early and often throughout the planning process, and then through the operations of the facility is also key. And I think you have to recognize that different people have different needs. It was interesting that the University of Texas at Arlington has both a men's and women's wheelchair basketball teams, and both very, very good. They helped with some of the publicity and marketing. Some of their feedback was much different than others in that, the vehicles are slow, I'm able to drive and I can go, 35, 40, 55. And so you do have obviously different perspectives and different user needs. I think, again, we continue to learn from a lot of the pilots projects that are going on around the country and the diverse use cases. We started a lot of the early projects were in downtown areas or college campuses, and we're seeing, the two in the national parks, the Wright Brothers National Memorial that North Carolina DOT helped with, obviously the Yellowstone National Park demonstration last summer, the Med City Mover that I mentioned that MnDOT conducted, smaller city, Rochester, Minnesota, obviously home of the Mayo Clinic. So definitely a need for those types of services. The North Carolina DOT really built on the Wright Brothers National Memorial test and has their Cassie vehicle in operation in a local park, Cary Bend, in the town of Cary right now, and that's got, I think, another two months to go. There's some additional demonstration projects underway in Minnesota. MnDOT's got two projects, the Bear Track project, which is in White Bear Lake, which is a suburban city to the north of St. Paul, and it's focusing on a shuttle service that operates between sort of an activity center, some apartment complexes, and the local YMCA that really focuses on, again, individuals with disabilities. The Go Marty, which is the Minnesota Autonomous Rural Transit Initiative, is in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, in the northern part of the state, sort of a more a smaller community and a rural area that's, again, testing a different type of technology, three of which are wheelchair equipped. You can see there from that upper slide, the wheelchairs enter into the back part of the vehicle. So again, getting information from different use cases. There are some examples around the country, as I'm sure you're aware of, full-size 40-foot buses, and the CT Fast Track CAV bus project in Connecticut, which uses the BRT, 9-mile BRT corridor around Hartford, and will have 3 automated buses operating on that corridor coming up this next year. And part of that project deals with precision docking at the stops to enhance wheelchair loading and unloading. So it tries to avoid getting that gap where you then have to bring out some type of ramp to make sure individuals can get across. So again, a different type of use case. obviously there are a variety of other FTA funded projects, Houston Metro. There's still the projects in I Street in Florida, as well as Lake Nona, Florida, and a variety of others. And then the Aspire UTC program also has been doing a lot of work, including the internal security or securement devices. So a lot of things I think going on right now that we'll continue to learn over this next year and really the next couple years, especially, as I said, as some of those new vehicle types that are really purpose built for automated shuttles and accommodating wheelchairs start coming online. So sort of in closing, I think some of the challenges and opportunities, I think more opportunities probably than challenges, but learning and sharing information continues to be a key. So, you know, outreach to the disabled community, making sure they're involved early in the process as you're planning for different types of services, taking a look and making sure that that complete street need and that you've addressed any potential impediments for individuals to get to and from a transit stop, overcoming any initial concerns. You know, I think even the people that rode in the vehicle indicated in the that they were and sometimes a little nervous or weren't quite sure. But that again, the feedback so far has been very positive to both the shuttle services and the smart intersection. Again, still a need for some type of probably on vehicle presence. Now, maybe that can be remote at some point and you could just communicate, but still that need, but also very positive that it enhances their mobility and it provides different options and opportunities for individuals. So with that, let me sort of conclude and wrap up. Happy to take any questions that you might have or hear from your experience with pilots or projects or research activities, you know, testing things in labs and doing other kinds of things or focus groups and then get some discussion going on areas that you think we might be able to continue to work together and collaborate on. So Laura, let me turn it back over to you to help facilitate any questions.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for your presentation. We have a question from Kat, who asks if any of the shuttles that you worked with possibly have any kind of racks to also transport bicycles, for example, if someone is using a mixed form of transportation in their day.
That's actually an excellent question. None of the ones that we worked with, the demonstrations had that. And to be quite honest, I'm not aware of any of the shuttles that I can think of right now that have bike racks. I would assume they might allow bikes inside, but because they travel at such low speeds, but the smaller shuttles, I'm not aware of any. I would assume some of the full-size buses, as they're looking at possible demonstrations, they might. So I'll actually check and see if Connecticut, if their buses have wheelchair lifts on them, because that's actually an excellent question.
All right. We have another question from Brian Watching. He says, there seems to be quite a few desperate solutions and they tend to be limited in scope location. So have you thought of the best way to integrate with the previously implemented transportation services?
So again, I think that's another excellent question. I think like everything, you know, change sometimes happens slowly. And so as the services are being introduced, they're typically done, especially now since they tend to be lower speed in environments where you're either not in mixed traffic or you're in a special use area, and then potentially expanding those to a wider audience, especially as we start looking at, you know, a full-size bus, a higher speed bus, those types of things. And then looking at special use applications, you know, for example, HOV lanes or high occupancy vehicle lanes or busways have been suggested as a way to start testing some of the bus platooning. I mean, some of that's already been done. But I agree with you, it is a lot of different things going on around the country, but I think, gain experience, gain knowledge from that, and then hopefully move forward in a larger, more coordinated fashion.
All right. Laura has a question. Oh, and by the way, if once we get the answers, if any of you people who are asking the questions need some clarification, just go ahead and chat or go ahead and chime in. Laura has a statement, and I kind of want to piggyback off of that, which is, you said that there sometimes needed to be assistance for people who like to get secure into people in wheelchairs and things like that. Like I've noted in the buses that we have around here in Blacksburg that yes, the bus driver has to come out and make sure that the wheelchairs are securely in place. So is that one of the needs for the attendant, or is there also something in fashion already that can be done by a lot of the people in wheelchairs already, depending on their disability? And then also going along with that, Laura says that some people also prefer to ride actually on the vehicle seat versus their wheelchair as well. So that would also be another I guess consideration for the shuttles.
Yes, yeah. Again, excellent points in that different people have different needs and different preferences, and so ensuring that you can accommodate all of those, I think, is important, just as you could on many buses today. And I think we'll continue to see advances in the in-vehicle securement devices. Again, some of these issues aren't new. We've been struggling with wheelchair securement for a long time. But hopefully, as technology continues to evolve, we'll be able to take advantage of more of those types of things. And a lot of people travel in groups on vehicles, so you have someone with you, so making sure there's space. That was one of the issues or questions with the GEM vehicle. The wheelchair in sort of the back part of it, and if there was a person accompanying that individual, they sat up in the front by the driver. So again, trying to obviously test some things, see how it goes, but then make improvements based on what we know, and making sure that everyone it has space to sit and be secure in those vehicles, especially as we see the speeds increasing.
We have a question from Kelly. She asked, did you see any variability in disabled users' attitudes toward those solutions by age or by age of onset of disability?
We didn't really get into that level of detail for the most part. So I would say, and it was, it's a relatively small sample size, but the older individuals seemed as interested and felt comfortable as the younger individuals, and I think that's backed up. We did, as part of this project, we were also able to add some questions to one of the NCHRP projects that was looking at automation of different types of user groups, and we were able to add some questions for the individuals that they surveyed that were over 65, I think, and to those with disabilities, and the responses there were fairly similar and interested. So I think while older individuals may be a little more cautious, the experience, at least with the older individuals participating in this project, once they rode in the vehicle, they didn't have any concerns. So,
okay, thank you. We have a question from Andy Alden. He asks, did you have any problems with clearing slow-moving AVs through signalized intersections? And if so, how did you address those issues? He comments that DSRC communication alone seems unlikely to solve the issue. So if you had any of those issues.
Yeah, so in this case, we we didn't, but again, the intersections that the vehicles were going through are relatively low speed intersections. So certainly if the vehicle were operating on a street with a 45, 50 mile an hour speed limit, that would be an issue. In this case, they were all on streets where it's in the 30 to 35 mile an hour range. So having a vehicle, especially that's stopping and turning, was not a major problem. But I think that's one of the concerns with the lower speed is how it interacts with traffic in the adjacent lane. And I think the University of Florida and Florida DOT has done some work at looking at a couple of the intersections there and noted some, watch the behavior of the other vehicles with the lower speed shuttles. And I think there are some potential conflicts that could arise by vehicles wanting to get around a lower speed vehicle. So making sure again that you're not causing another problem by a lower speed automated vehicle is important.
Thank you. Seems that a lot of people are very interested in this topic. So considering that, is there somewhere that where people can share ideas related to this topic and information on projects and experiences that might be having in relation to this?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts on that. I think certainly the Transportation Research Board, TRB, with some of their advisory committees is always a good spot. Same thing with APTA, the American Public Transit Association, has a couple different committees looking at it. The TRB sponsors, it's now called, I think, ARTS, the Road Transport Automation Symposium, that's become an annual event, and that's a great way to participate and share information. Obviously, FTA does their ongoing, I think it's quarterly now, reports on the different projects. So getting involved, staying active in especially TRB activities, but also American Planning Association, Institute of Transportation Engineers, IT, variety of different groups have different forums for sharing information. So to my way of thinking, I think that's very important because, again, as was sort of mentioned, we've got lots of different things going on, and one, making sure we don't necessarily reinvent the wheel, although retrying similar things in different areas is beneficial. But I think those are all good. For example, obviously, one of the things that the Minnesota DOT has been focusing on with all their demonstrations is winter weather conditions, which, for the most part, obviously Arlington, Texas doesn't need to worry about, with the exception of a couple maybe ice storms and every once in a while snowstorms. So there are differences in what the vehicle needs are and what the needs to get to and from the stops are for individuals in different areas.
Just a comment on this one, and also a question. Kat noticed that, on that last slide that you had before, you had a couple of AVs that were going into like national parks and things of that nature. And they asked if there was an increased interest in providing that type of transportation option in order to get individuals more access to those outdoor spaces that otherwise might not have that ability.
So I think the answer there is yes, and I think that's one of the reasons that North Carolina DOT partnered with the town of Cary and are operating that in one of the local parks. I think they then partnered with some of the senior groups, AARP and others, to again use it as a way to get maybe seniors who aren't able to get out quite as much to get out and enjoy the park. I think the national parks too have always tried, especially over the last 20-30 years, to test different ways to reduce congestion in the parks, if you will, as was suggested, provide access to individuals who may not be able to get there other ways. there are a number of those examples. Zion Canyon, for example, or Zion National Park in the Canyon, with the bus only areas, that the only way you can during the peak season gain access, other than if you're staying at the lodge, is by taking the shuttle buses. It's a dead end, so it's a great example of that. The Island Explorer bus system in Acadia National Park is another one that's been very well received as a way to get around the park without having to drive. So you reduce congestion, you reduce emissions, you reduce the need for parking spaces. So I think, and that's why the National Park Service was interested in those two pilots, and I think they are considering some other ones coming up, just as a way of testing technologies, making it easier to access the national parks for all user groups.
All right, we have a question from Christy Miller. Did you consider any other disabilities or impairments, such as deaf or hard of hearing, in this study?
Yeah, we did not. It just happened that we narrowed it down to what was sort of a doable group. I think there's a lot more, again, that could be done with individuals hard of hearing, obviously individuals with learning disabilities, a whole host of a broader spectrum that just because of funding availability and ability to recruit, it was a fairly narrow focused group.
All right. I encourage, if anyone still has questions, go ahead and you can keep typing those in for now. I just want to first say, thank you very much, Dr. Turnbull, for presenting all this information. Obviously, it's sparked a pretty big conversation. Let's see. One question was, how do people with varying disabilities instruct the AV?
Well, again, so it could be through a variety of different mechanisms. It could be you call it on an app, which could have different features for different user groups. It could be that it's on a regular schedule, and you just know that it'll be there at 5 after the hour, and so you go out to the stop. So I think, again, there are a variety of different ways that they can call, or they could communicate with the vehicle and interact to schedule. And then once on the vehicle, again, right now it's still in the early stages, but it could be voice activated. It could be, obviously most of them have Braille on the vehicle to allow individuals with no sight to make sure they know. It could be audio through either a teleoperation center, if at some point you get to a situation where there's no operator on the vehicle to communicate. So I think a variety of different ways. And again, the need to test all those and make sure they meet the needs of the different user groups is important, and areas for further research and testing and deployment would be part of that, I think.
All right, thank you. So you did mention that there was a worry of some individuals of maybe who you're sharing the vehicle with. So did you look into that issue of how you'd be able to limit access to unauthorized users in order to ensure passenger safety?
No, so again, we didn't look specifically at that issue, but I think it's a safety security issue. So if it's a case where you want to make sure the vehicle does not stop before you get to the destination, making sure you program, for example, that if there isn't an individual on the vehicle, if there is, a safety officer or something, making that request verbally, or at least ensuring that in advance that it's going to make multiple stops and potentially pick up other individuals, could be accommodated. As
AVs are becoming more prominent and gaining some momentum right now in transportation policy, have you faced any backlash, or have you seen any backlashes or challenges with implementing these AVs?
No, I think again, you know, it like everything, there's a cost involved. So making sure that there's funding available, making sure that there's a benefit to the service, you know, making sure that you're not taking a job from someone. So it's, you know, most cases people are looking at either new service or different types of services. Making sure that we are training the workforce for the future, and that, you know, again, it may not be driving the vehicle, but it may be making sure that the individual on the vehicle has enough computer skills to fix things or address things, has skills in personal interaction with the customer. So there's still a whole host of, I think, workforce needs, even if you move toward more automated vehicles in some instances.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and put something in the chat for everybody before we get to a last question, or if people keep wanting to add more, that's fine as well. We still have time. One of that is that I'm going to have putting down our next couple of safety webinars. That is because one of them is very related to this one, indeed. So I think that a lot of the people who are involved right now in this webinar might be interested in this next one, which is autonomous vehicles for small towns, system, service, and safety from research to practice. That one we are actually having in May, also from researchers from TTI. And then we also have one on April 13th involving lane chain hazard analysis and to identify conflicts and time-to-time collisions using radar traces. So I wanted to just put that in the chat right now. There is, I'm sorry, I thought I put the link in, but I will put that in there shortly, where you can register to attend those sessions if you so desire. Another question that we had from Laura was, have we considered changing the design of buses to make them more accessible? So for example, long haul buses only have lifts and no ramps. Lifts always break, from her experience. And so she was just wondering if you were involved in any way. I know you kind of talked about that difference right now in the design, but did that, how much did that play into the AVs as well?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. As the AVs move forward, what type of device is the best? Is it a lift? Is it nothing at all? You elevate the stop. So, for example, I mean, that's what the Connecticut system does. The stop is elevated so that when the bus pulls in, the individuals have already come up via a ramp or some type of way, and so all they do is roll right into the vehicle. So it could be that with automated shuttles or buses, as well as if they're lower floor, the ramp might be, you know, it's a less of an incline, so it's easier to get up. So again, I you know, as long as we've been sort of dealing with these issues over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that there still is a lot of need to look at different ways to make it easier. So I think that's going to be continue to be an area that, as we see new vehicles come online, we'll be able to assess different ways of making sure there's that easy access.
Okay. All right, another question about the future research in this area. So are there any plans or projects underway to further this in the US, looking at different disabilities or anything internationally have you looked at regarding AVs and the disabled community?
So I think the answer is yes. I think, you know, the IIJA bill has a lot of funding for pilots and demonstration projects. The first round of SMART grants was just awarded, and I think a couple of those addressed some of the individuals with disabilities access to different types of facilities. So I think there's going to continue to be an interest and focus in that area. The Europeans have done probably more research in some of those areas. And again, I think have some experience that would be beneficial for all of us to gain from. It's called the SHOW project, and I can't think of what SHOW stands for right now, but again, they've been testing different types of shuttle technology, bus technologies in probably half a dozen European communities. The European Union has a very robust research program for transportation. And so there are a lot of big ongoing projects that far outweigh sort of what we spend in this country on research. So learning more from them, I think would be beneficial. They sometimes come to the arts symposium that I mentioned, and oftentimes at the TRB annual meeting, you may hear things. And I think, now that we're sort of out of the pandemic shutdown and we're getting back a little bit toward normal, more of that interaction is beginning to occur, which is all good.
Awesome. All right. Well, I went ahead and fixed those links in case you were interested in two of those other webinars. That is in the chat right now. And otherwise, first of all, again, thank you very much. You had a lot of questions. Obviously, this is something very interesting to a lot of people and affects people's lives very directly. We will have the webinar recorded, probably online and available this week. So, and if you have attended this webinar, you will be getting the email stating that it is up and ready for you to share or watch again, or anything like that. Right now, Dr. Turnbull is working on that final report, which will be up in the summer. So you can also see that on our safety website coming up in the summer. And other than that, if there are any other further questions, you can hang on. But otherwise, I think you're getting a lot of thank yous in the chats as well right now. I think everyone is very thankful for this. So thank you again very much. And I hope to see a lot of you in the next safety webinar.
Fantastic.